Deputy Stanley.
Plans are moving ahead to build 3 major projects along the national grid, and these are at various stages to build a total of 490 kilometres of new power lines. And that as may be, that is needed. The North-South interconnector, that has been delayed by 7 years. 97% of landowners, 213 in total, are refusing access to EirGrid onto their land to do environmental impact statements. GridLink, which is the South East and Leinster one, is meeting substantial opposition. The consultation has been extended and we welcome that till January. Grid West one, that is likely to go the same way. And people are very concerned about huge rows of pylons across the landscape. They're concerned about the impact on farming, landscape and tourism, the valuation of property and possible health implications. Now, EirGrid began in 2007 by claiming that undergrounding was not technically feasible or reliable. However, the publication of the Government's Independent Expert Commission report, since that publication, EirGrid now concede that undergrounding is feasible and is reliable. So, we're now down to cost. And you just note that in Denmark, new 400 kV cables are being undergrounded. EirGrid has the information on this. They recently completed the East-West interconnector, which had 40 kilometres underground in this state and 30 kilometres underground in Wales. And the cost of this, if you average it out, was 2.2 million per kilometre, almost the same as the estimates for the overhead lines, which is between 2.1 and 2.3 kilometres. And this is not counting the estimated losses due to the delays. And Chambers Ireland, Tánaiste, estimate that the delay on the North-South interconnector alone is costing 30 million per annum. That's 7 years of losses. You're already talking about 210 million in losses, if their estimate is accurate. But say they're half right, it means over 100 million in losses already on that project.
Question, please,
and I want you to take into consideration the long-term costs. I said this to Minister Rabbitte last week. There's operational costs, and we must consider the long-term costs. We know where the short-termism thinking goes in the past, and your government has rightly criticised that. But I want you to think long-term. If we put them underground, they last longer, it reduces transmission losses, less disturbance to cables, they won't be affected by severe weather conditions, lower maintenance costs and less damage to landscape and the environment and visual impact.
Thank you.
Now, Minister Rabbitte, just my question. Minister Rabbitte said last week in reply to me that he was open to carrying out a cost-benefit analysis on underground versus overhead. So will you now commit, will your government now commit and change policy to do this?
Thank you.
Well, first of all, and I think as the Deputy has acknowledged, Minister Rabbitte has extended the deadline for the making of submissions in relation to the pylons issue. That deadline has been submitted to January the 7th. I would encourage the Deputy to submit the information that he has put on the record of the House and the case that he has made here as part of that process. Because, of course, it is important that the consultative process is full, that all of the information, all of the cases that people have to make in relation to this issue should be made and should be considered. There is, and I think you're right, there is an issue that we have to consider here for the long term. We all know that the extension of the electricity grid and the availability of energy and electricity supply is critical for the generation of employment, for economic development, particularly in the regions of this country. I mean, we do, I think, and all of us acknowledge that, there are some regions of the country that have experienced economic difficulties and difficulties in attracting investment and employment, and it's critical that there is an adequate energy supply to all of the regions. And I think that in looking at this issue, I do think that we have to look at the longer term. Now, clearly, EirGrid has an obligation, and Minister Rabbitte has drawn attention to this, to operate, first of all, on the basis of consulting the public and listening to what the public have to say in relation to this issue. Secondly, to comply with the planning processes that are in place. And thirdly, to take the highest possible international standards in relation to all of the issues that have to be considered here, including environmental issues, including the issues relating to whether the cables should be underground or overground. There was, as you know, a study done in relation to the issue of whether they should be undergrounded or overground in relation to the Meath Tyrone project. You're aware of the outcome of that. Of that study, and I think all of these issues have to be considered as part of the consultation process that Minister Abbott has now extended to the 7th of January.
Thank you. Deputy, 1 minute. Thank you.
Just on the cost, if we go back to 2007, EirGrid were estimating then tarnished that the cost was anything up to 25 times higher to put them underground. By 2009, they had changed that to 7 times the cost. Minister Abbott did state recently that it's imperative for state companies and developers of energy projects to have an early, transparent engagement with local communities and stakeholders. You're quoted saying that recently, and I welcome that. But Eircom management confirmed as late as yesterday to our party that the consultation process is only dealing with issues of routes and corridors and the direction they're going in, not the issues of undergrounding versus overhead. And this is a key flaw in the planning process. And you seem to be alluding that you're willing to think about things in the long term. I welcome that, because we've had enough problems in the past and we're still tidying up due to a lot of short-termism in the last couple of decades.
Question, please.
But there's a major flaw in the planning consultation process if they're not prepared to consider, as part of that process, the whole issue of the viability and the cost and long-term costs of undergrounding versus overheads. And we want to try and deal with this in a proper way, because we're talking about billions of euros of taxpayers' money. So my question is this: will you now commit to having EirGrid to correct this and ensure that all options, Minister Abbott and Taoiseach, making sure that all options are considered as part of the consultation and planning process?
Thank you, Deputy.
Well, as I've said, Minister Abbott has extended the consultation period to the 7th of January. And I would encourage everybody who has an interest in the issue to make their case in advance of that 7th of January deadline. And I don't feel that anybody should be constrained about what case they make. I think that people who have an interest in this issue, whether it's public representatives, members of the public, people who are likely to be affected by it, people who have an opinion on it, should make their case. I don't think there should be a constraint in relation to that, and I would encourage that be done. You refer, of course, to the issue of costs, and you've set out a range of figures, of course, in relation to costs. I think we also have to be mindful that at the end of the day, of course, the cost is ultimately borne by the consumer. So if there are additional costs associated with particular options that are taken, that cost is going to be reflected in the price of electricity to the domestic consumer and, of course, to business for whom energy costs is an issue in relation to the creation of employment. But I expect that all of these issues will be fully thrashed out and will be part of the consultation process, which will now take place up to the 7th of January.
Thank you.